When they moved it to the Porsche Arena in 2006, they literally put their name on the building. Players voted it their favorite tournament in its category 10 separate times between 2007 and 2019. 33,000 people packed that arena in 2025, the highest attendance since the pandemic. They ran the Porsche talent team. They donated €100 per ace to Stuttgart children's charities. Emma Raducanu was a brand ambassador. Angelique Kerber was a brand ambassador. They built something real, organic, something that took decades to grow. When Arina Sabalenka walked into a Stuttgart press conference and said, "I want to finally win the Porsche this year," it didn't sound like a sponsor read. It sounded like something personal, because it was. That's what 47 years of real investment looks like. And then it ended. Not with a fight, not with a scandal, but with a three-pointed star. In December 2025, Mercedes-Benz walked into the room. What they announced wasn't just a sponsorship. It was the largest single commitment in the documented history of women's professional sport. Starting January 1, 2026, the WTA Tour officially became the WTA Tour driven by Mercedes-Benz. Title partner, global exclusivity, net post signage at every tournament on the planet. Porsche, the brand that had built women's tennis's most iconic and most loyal partnership, suddenly found itself in a corner. Technically, they were protected. Stuttgart was Porsche's tournament. They'd organized it, funded it, named the arena. Mercedes couldn't touch that. But the broader identity, the designation of most loyal sponsor in women's tennis that they literally carried on their own website, that belonged to the whole tour. And now the whole tour wore a three-pointed star. Now, Alex has yet to win a WTA title. She hasn't broken into the top 20, but there is a big reason why she may already be the most attractive option for sponsors looking to sign. Not the most attractive option among players her age. Not the most interesting rising Asian star. The most attractive option. Full stop. Across all categories, all sports, all demographics. Porsche's commercial team had been reading the same reports. They reached out to her management through channels that people inside her team described as architecturally flattering, as if whoever designed the approach had studied every previous negotiation surrounding her and specifically engineered it to avoid every friction point those conversations had hit. They weren't competing with Nike's apparel territory. They weren't stepping on Babolat's equipment deal. They weren't crowding Globe Telecom or BPI or locally Jollibee or the Milo partnership that had just launched on February 22 at SM Mega Mall, where Milo Philippines VP of Marketing described Alex as embodying a full-circle story and their brand's most complete expression of its champion development philosophy. Porsche existed in a completely different universe. Automotive prestige, lifestyle aspiration, European heritage fused with performance engineering, the exact intersection of speed, elegance, and competitive ferocity that had defined their identity since Ferry Porsche built the first 356 Roadster in an Austrian sawmill in 1948. No one else was standing in that territory. No one else could. And the number they put on the table, $200 million, structured across a decade, encompassing brand ambassador duties, a lifestyle collection, fragrance development, and a dedicated Southeast Asian market campaign, was the largest individual athlete investment in Porsche's entire corporate history, by an enormous margin. Emma Raducanu had been an ambassador. Angelique Kerber had been an ambassador. Neither arrangement came close to this. All of it concentrated on 1-2-0-year-old from Quezon City. But here's what nobody in that boardroom had fully accounted for. When the WTA's leadership got wind of what was coming, the internal reaction wasn't polite concern. It was fury, and the reason for that fury goes deeper than losing a partner. The anger wasn't simply about Porsche leaving, it was about what Porsche's decision implied about the WTA's commercial value. Think about the timing. Mercedes had just delivered the largest sponsorship in women's sports history. Billie Jean King herself called it transformative at the ceremony in Stuttgart. The WTA had spent decades making a single argument that institutional investment, not individual star power, but the tour itself, was what deserved commercial recognition. That argument had finally, after all those years, produced a record-breaking result. And then Porsche stood up and said with its wallet, not its words, that the institution isn't the product. The human being is the product. WTA officials who had built entire careers on the collective investment argument watched Porsche redirect 47 years of women's tennis identity away from the tour and toward a single player competing within it. The concern was about precedent. If Porsche could do this, what would stop every other institutional partner from following? Why buy the tour when you could buy the athlete? Why invest in the framework when the framework's entire commercial value was derived from the Sabalenkas and Swiateks and Goffs and Alexes competing inside it? The rage was real, and it was commercially accurate, and its accuracy was precisely what made it so infuriating. Now remove it all. Remove the fury. Remove the commercial warfare. Remove the WTA officials staring at their phones at 7 a.m. watching their professional morning rewrite itself in real time. What's left? A girl from Quezon City who began 2025 ranked 140th in the world. She ended it ranked 50th, with her first WTA title from Guadalajara, her first Grand Slam main draw victory from the US Open, her first 5-0-0 level final from Eastbourne. And in a year-end reflection, she posted not as a victory lap, but as a love letter to her family, to her team, to her supporters, and to baby Alex, the little girl who made an enormous choice that made the woman possible. By February 23, 2026, she had reached a career high of 31. She had just beaten Jasmine Paolini, world number 7, in Dubai, her fourth top 1-0 victory, a statistical pace the WTA's own analysts described as historically premature for a player at her current ranking. She represented the Philippines at the 2025 SEA Games in Thailand, gold in women's singles, bronze in mixed doubles and team events. She led Team Philippines to a 5-0 sweep in the Billie Jean King Cup, personally undefeated, securing a promotion the Philippine Tennis Federation called a generational milestone. Vogue Philippines cover. Nylon Philippines cover. Globe Telecom signed her at age 8. Babolat Equipment. Nike since 2019, who for her Wimbledon debut commissioned a Sampaguita hair tie, a national flower accessory, because someone there understood her cultural identity specifically enough to make that gesture instead of a generic branding moment. She competed in Milo Sports Clinics as a child and returned as their ambassador in 2026, not as a commercial transaction, but as the literal living fulfillment of what that program was always supposed to produce. And Vera Files and Rappler spent months fact-checking fabricated sponsorship stories about her, because her community's emotional investment in her recognition consistently outpaced what any verified commercial reality had yet delivered. People were inventing sponsorship stories about her because the real ones felt too small for who she was becoming. Think about that. The reality wasn't big enough. Gigi Salmon, Sky Sports' lead presenter, said it plainly at a London tennis industry gathering, in terms of her appeal. The crowds that follow her, she might already be the biggest star. Coco Gauff, reigning Grand Slam champion and one of the most commercially sophisticated athletes in women's sports, publicly referenced the Federer phenomenon, the idea that when you play a certain kind of star, some portion of the crowd didn't primarily come to see you. Porsche cited both of those observations in their internal justification documents. They cited the 33,000 people in the Porsche arena in 2025. They cited Southeast Asia's luxury market trajectory. And they cited the verified reality that misinformation flourishes around Alex, recognizing that a fan community producing viral fake endorsement stories at that volume represented a commercial intensity no manufactured campaign could ever approximate. Sky Sports. Coco Gauff. Tennis 365. Porsche's own analysts, they all arrived at the same conclusion through different routes. And Porsche moved. What they purchased wasn't an achievement already documented. It was an achievement still arriving. The WTA officials had every structural reason for their anger. Major brands need partner alignment. The Mercedes arrangement deserved a coherent stakeholder ecosystem to generate its projected returns. Their concerns were legitimate, professionally grounded, and entirely beside the point of what Porsche actually decided. Because at its deepest level, this decision had nothing to do with Mercedes. Nothing to do with commercial frameworks or title partner exclusivity or the protected status of a Stuttgart arena. It had to do with a 20-year-old who told cameras in Dubai, "How many people would love to be in my position? I make it a point every day to really give my all and be grateful for what I have." It had to do with the girl who said at Indian Wells, with the quiet authority of someone who demonstrates rather than declares, "I know that I belong here." It had to do with the athlete who looked back at her entire breakthrough year not as a commercial triumph, not as a professional validation, but as a love letter. Porsche didn't choose a product. They chose a person. And that is older, more durable, and ultimately more powerful than any framework the WTA has ever constructed. So here's the question I'm leaving you with, and I genuinely want your answer below. When Porsche walks away from 47 years of institutional loyalty to bet everything on 120-year-old from the Philippines, is that the most commercially rational decision in the history of women's sports sponsorship? Or are they simply the first powerful entity willing to admit what everyone watching Alex already knew, that some athletes don't belong to institutions? Some athletes transcend them, and the moment you recognize one, everything else becomes secondary. Drop your answer in the comments, because when we come back to this story in 5 years, it's going to look like either genius, or the confirmation of something even more remarkable than genius. But if stories like this are why you watch, subscribe, because there are more of them coming, and you don't want to miss what happens next.